What's up, guys? DEM Sports coming at you with a new video. This might be a little bit longer of a video since I haven't made one in a little while, and I've kind of been wanting to do one. I wanted to do it a couple weeks ago whenever bowl season really started to wrap up. Don't have a whole lot of time, and this is probably going to be a little bit longer video, so I'm going to try to do it just in one shot, no editing, etc. So hopefully we can get through this. But yeah, we just saw the national championship game wrap up. Congratulations to Indiana. Congratulations to WVU alumni Kirk Cignetti on one of the greatest coaching performances we've ever seen, to take the losingest program in history and turn them around into a national championship team in 2 years is absolutely amazing. But bowl season overall, if I had to wrap it up in one word, it would probably be sad. And I don't mean that even in a, like whenever you say like something's like bad, you say like, oh, that was like a sad performance or whatever. No, I mean, like, I actually am like sad about bowl season. Like, I remember whenever bowls used to mean something. Like, I remember those years of being happy that WVU made it to the Gator Bowl. Like, that was a huge deal for us. Like, teams used to decide whether or not their season was a success by whether or not they made a bowl game. And now it's just all playoffs or bust, and nobody cares about bowls. It's just, I don't know. I get really nostalgic for those like older days, I was like thinking about it, like I was just talking with my brother the other day about how I missed back before we all had, cell phones that can, tell us the score of every game instantly. We used to, on Sunday nights, well, on Sundays, you only had the only NFL game you had, well, us growing up in Morgantown, was usually the Steelers playing on CBS. And we would sit around the TV on Sunday nights at 8 o'clock watching ESPN Primetime or whatever it was called with Chris Berman. He would go all the way, and we would sit around watching that to see what happened in the other games, because that was, the only way. But yeah, I don't know. There's just something nostalgic about that, and that's what I get with these bowl games. Like, I miss the days of sitting around. I miss the days whenever a New Year's bowl was a huge deal. And New Year's Day was just jam-packed with bowl games. I mean, there would be like so many bowls you couldn't watch them all. We'd be flipping around back and forth. I used to hate because the Rose Bowl had the like monopoly on the 5 o'clock time slot, and so everything else would stop for the Rose Bowl at 5 o'clock, and I'd be so upset about it because at the time I didn't care about the Big Ten or the Pac-12 or whoever. I think it was the Big Ten versus the Pac-10 or whatever at the time, and I hated all those teams, so I hated the Rose Bowl. But I love that. And now New Year's Day, there's like 3 games and they're all playoffs because the playoffs just have the monopoly on it now. So yeah, I mean, I'm just sad that like bowl games don't mean anything anymore. And it's not even that it doesn't mean anything to the bigger teams, because then you get these big teams, and they're like, well, like the SEC, for example. And I'm going to go on a bit of an SEC rant. You guys are probably sick of hearing me rant about them, but they suck every year in bowl season. They won 2 games this year when they weren't playing themselves. They won 4 bowl games total, but 2 of those wins were because it was an SEC team versus an SEC team. The only reason they got a team into the semifinals was because of Tulane, essentially, because Ole Miss played Tulane and then went on to play Georgia in the quarterfinals. So you had an SEC team playing an SEC team, so you're guaranteed one of them is going to the semis. And then what happened once they got to the semis? Oh, they lost. Yeah. But the SEC is so good. Every year it's the same. And you get these excuses, well, half the team opted out. Okay. Or they'll be like, oh, well, the best team from the, not the best, but, the 3rd place ACC team was playing the, 8th place SEC team. That's why, it's like, okay, well, all I heard all year was how deep the SEC was and how the 8th best team in the SEC was still better than all these other teams. So if it's not impressive whenever the 3rd best ACC team beats them, why is it so impressive when Alabama beats them? Tennessee is a perfect example of this. Tennessee had no wins over teams with winning records or something like that this year, yet they were ranked in the top 25 every single week except for the final rankings, the final like CFP rankings or whatever it was. But they played nobody. Or they didn't beat anybody, I should say. It wasn't that they didn't play anybody. It was that they didn't beat anybody. But they kept being ranked and ranked and ranked and ranked. So then whenever all these other teams would go in there and beat them, which they all did, then, oh, it's so impressive. They beat Tennessee. Them and everybody else. So, yeah, I mean, okay, that concludes the SEC rant. But, yeah, again, with like these players opting out, it's not even with these big schools, we started swallowing that. It all changed whenever Christian McCaffrey blew out his ACL in, I think, the Rose Bowl. And everybody was like, because he was going to go on to the NFL, to the draft, and he blew out his ACL. And whether or not it really affected his draft, position, it obviously went on to have a very successful NFL career. He's still playing. But, players started being afraid they were going to get hurt, and they were going to hurt their NFL prospects. So the big name schools, the SEC school, all this stuff, all the big players opt out. But now with the transfer portal and NIL, the smaller schools are doing the same thing because all of their good players are wanting to opt out to go enter the transfer portal and chase a bag next year at a bigger school. So now you've even got smaller schools, at least then it was like, oh, this is kind of cool. We saw like a Sun Belt school beat a, Big Ten school or whatever, but now you don't even have that because now half the small schools are opted out as well. So I don't know how you fix that. I mean, you got to either punish players for opting out. Maybe they don't get their NIL checks, or you take some money back from the NIL, or maybe you put stipulations where you reward them more if they play in a bowl game. If I was like a mega billionaire, I would love to start a bowl game where the winning team gets like, $1 million per player or something. Because even $1 million divided up amongst the school is nothing. You divide $1 million amongst 100 people, everybody's getting, I don't know, I'm bad at math, $10,000 each. Is that 10,000 times 100? So they don't care about that. They're going to go get 10 times that next year playing for Missouri or wherever they're looking to transfer to. So, yeah, I'm just kind of sad. Also, it's, it's sad that college football's over. We're 8 months away from more football. Even those small bowl games that, like I said, have, 90% of the teams are opted out, but, it's still fun to come home from work at 5:00 and there's already football on and you've got, football all night, every single night of the week. I don't know. I enjoy it anyway, but yeah. Otherwise they, were talking about the attendance at the CFP games was down. That kind of really makes sense if you think about it. So let's think about this. If you're Oregon, if you're a fan of Oregon, and you're playing Texas Tech in Miami, if you're a fan of Oregon and you're saying, I think we're going to win this quarterfinal, go on to the semifinal, are you going to spend your hard-earned money to go down all the way across the country, to go down to Florida to watch them play? Or are you going to save your money to go the following week to the semifinals? And the flip side of that is, if you think you're going to get beat, are you going to spend your money to go all the way down there to watch your team lose? Like there was a radio, not really a DJ, personality. He hosts he's on one of the morning shows up here. And I remember hearing him say that he spent thousands of dollars to go watch the Eagles in the Super Bowl the one year, and they lost. And he was like, he said he will never spend that much money to go to a sporting event ever again, because he was like, it was miserable. I spent thousands of dollars to go watch my team lose. He was making the argument that you're better off spending that money to go to like a concert or a festival or something like that, because at least there you know what you're going to get. You're going to get to watch your favorite band play or whatever, so you'd rather spend $1,000 to go get, Bruce Springsteen tickets or whatever versus going to watch the Eagles play some big game, because then if the Eagles lose, your whole trip feels ruined and worthless. I get that, so it doesn't surprise me that CFP attendance is down, especially this year, just the way it worked out with Oregon having to travel all the way across the country. Now, I mean, I guess if you're like a fan of Tulane or JMU or something like that, this could very well be the only time you're ever going to see your team in a playoff. So even if you do think they're going to get beat, you still might want to go. Excuse me. That said, one thing I had been talking about like Tulane and JMU being in there. Does anybody think that WVU would have a much easier path to the playoffs if they joined a group of 6 conference? Because we could go to an American conference. I know this year probably wasn't a very good example of that because we played one MAC school and they kicked our ass. But, with the money that we spend, we could outspend an American school or a Sunbelt school for sure. I mean, look at these Sunbelt schools. I mean, we could go to one of those conferences and easily win 10, 11, 12 games a year, be the champion and representing that conference. As long as they're doing these automatic bids for the conference champions, I feel like there's a much easier path to the playoffs being in a group of 6 conference than there is being in the Big 12 specifically, or even the ACC. But this is the second year in a row that the Big 12 has only gotten one team in, their champion, and the second year in a row that the ACC has gotten a team that wasn't their champion in. But BYU proved this year that they will never put 2 Big 12 schools in, I don't think. It will take a miracle for them to put 2 Big 12 schools in. So until they either just go to straight top 12 teams are in, no more automatic qualifying for champions, or expand to 16, 24 teams, whatever, I honestly think WVU would be better off in a group of 6 if we want to get to the playoffs. Now we might be like Tulane, JMU, whatever. We might get to the playoffs, draw Alabama, and go get beat by 3 touchdowns. But we'd be there year after year. Anyway, that's just something I was thinking about literally on the way home from work tonight. I was like kind of thinking about that in my head. One last thing that I wanted to touch on was where I started with congratulating Kirk Cignetti on winning a championship. A lot of people were upset on social media that WVU didn't go and get Kirk Cignetti 2 years ago. And I get that. I mean, obviously I'm disappointed, seeing what he's done is crazy, but I'm not that mad or that upset about it for a number of reasons. Neil Brown had just won 9 games. You can't fire him after he won 9 games. You know what I mean? You gotta, we thought that the climb was finally climbing. We were finally getting somewhere with this trust to climb. We thought we were getting up to the top. And so you can't fire him after he wins 9 games. You just can't. So there's that. So that's why I'm not upset with like Ren Bager for not moving on after he won 9 games. And you got to also remember at the time, Kirk Cignetti wasn't like there's some huge splash hire. The people at Indiana were even going like, who? He wasn't some, big time go. Everybody was seeking, rushing to the door. If he was, he wouldn't be at Indiana. He would not be at Indiana if he was some big splash hire. He'd be at Florida, Georgia, LSU. He'd be probably not LSU because they were still happy with Brian Kelly at the time, but he would have been someplace else. So were we ready to move on from a 9-win coach to go hire another group of 5 coach No, even if we fired Neil Brown that year, very slim chance that we would have hired Kirk Cinetti, in my opinion. The second thing is, he has a lot more resources at Indiana than he would have here. Even, I know that the first year he did it a lot with what he had. And then, got a lot after he did. He got a lot of big investments. But I was looking it up. Indiana's football budget is $61 million. I couldn't find WVU's football budget, but I found a thing that said football and basketball combined is $62 million. So let's say it's 40-20 or whatever. So WVU's football budget's probably 40 million. So he has a lot more money there. I don't think that he could, I don't want to say I don't think he could do what he's doing there here, but I don't think that we could afford it. And even if we could, would it be sustainable? Now, maybe the same thing happens. Maybe he comes here, wins 11 games, and goes to the playoffs in his very first year, and all of a sudden, all these donors come out of the woodworks and start throwing money at the school. But he's making like $9 million this year. We can't afford that. We've never paid a coach anywhere near that. Our head coach typically makes between $3 and $5 million. Would he give us a hometown discount? Maybe would he say, $5 million's enough? We gotta, I'll stay here. That's still generational wealth for me and my family. Maybe, but I've never really gotten that impression from him. Like, I've never really heard him say anything about WVU, West Virginia, anything. He, even like Nick Saban when he was like in Alabama, like I still heard talks about him like having ties to West Virginia, like coming up here occasionally, like that kind of stuff. I've never gotten that impression with Kirk Cinetti. So, yeah, I mean, it sucks that, watching somebody that we could have had, like I do think that if we would have offered him, he would have came here. Like anybody would, leave a group of 5 school to go to a Power 4 school, I think. But I feel like it would have just been setting us up for more heartbreak, because I feel like as soon as he started winning all these games and proving what a commodity he was, he's going to bail for someplace with more money. He would end up, look at all the schools that needed coaches this year. Some of them were going after him at Indiana. You think they wouldn't bombard him if he was at little old West Virginia? I'm talking Florida, Ole Miss, LSU. There was like 6 schools in the SEC alone. Arkansas, didn't they get a new coach this year? Morgantown Airport wouldn't have been able to handle all the traffic coming in and out of there, trying to lure him away. And eventually they probably would, because they would be able to double his salary. And I mean, are you going to make $4 million or $8 million? $9 million? So I feel like he would have essentially ended up being Rich Rod 2.0. And by that, I mean how heartbroken we all were when Rich Rod, who was supposed to be the, WVU guy, he's the West Virginia guy. He's not going anywhere. And then he leaves for Michigan, and we were all, hurt and pissed off and everything. I feel like the same thing would have happened with Kirk Cinetti. That said, if he came here and won a national championship and then left us the next year, as long as he gets us a national championship, that's all I ask for. All right, I think that's about everything that I had to touch on. Yeah, again, just kind of sad that, bowl season's over, football season's over, basketball season's here, but team seems to be kind of middle of the road. I don't know. We beat Kansas a couple weeks ago. That was pretty awesome, but then we went on the road to Houston and got blown out. Hell, we actually might be playing right now. I don't remember. I haven't looked at the schedule. I've kind of had a lot going on IRL, so one reason I haven't been making videos. But yeah. Anyway, that's all I really wanted to talk about. I'm not sure when the next video will be. Like I said, I know I've been neglecting this channel, but I've just had a lot going on and just kind of make videos whenever I feel like it and whenever I've got a few minutes. So I'll probably make a video later, maybe about the basketball team, baseball teams. Baseball should be starting pretty soon too, which actually almost anymore get more excited about our baseball and our soccer than honestly than even football or basketball because we've just been so bad for so long, and our baseball and soccer teams are actually really good. But that's it for me. Have a great rest of your evening. Let's go Mountaineers. Cheers.